Hello and welcome to rainy East Staffordshire. The rain is pelting down on my skylight here this afternoon, but I hope that you can hear my commentary as I describe how I painted these pink roses using oil paints and only three primary colours. The colours I chose were WInsor yellow and Cobalt blue and Magenta, and they're all from the Winsor & Newton artist range. And I used a titanium white from Michael Harding. And it was a really good challenge, and I'd highly recommend you have a go at this. It certainly helps to keep the painting looking cohesive. It sort of simplifies things, and I managed to make the colours that I wanted. I think they seem to have come out quite well, despite the limited palette. So have fun, hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you later. Okay, the first thing I need to do, having mixed the colours, I've got them on this disposable palette here so that I'm not tempted to pick up colours from elsewhere, so as I would on my normal palette. I'm going to start off by just blocking in the general shapes here. So I've got a dark, I'm thinning this down and putting a lot of Sansodor in. I've got this dark greenish brown colour that I've mixed using the three primary colours here, and I'm squinting at this arrangement. I'm just trying to work out quite where everything's going to go. So it's dark in the centre here. This is very diluted, so if I pick up a little bit more paint it becomes stronger, deeper tone, which helps me to see what I'm see the differences and things that I'm looking at here. There's a rose there. I'm looking at the overall shapes as much as possible, trying to focus on the relationships between all these parts of this subject and the spaces between them, the shapes that I'm looking at, really, the shapes they make. So trying to sort of see them in relation to each other here. The vase isn't a terribly important part of this. I've arranged the flowers so that it's really hidden under all of these leaves. I wanted a very kind of open shape to the flowers, sort of rounded shape to the arrangement. So I'm just squinting away. The flowers are much lighter than the leaves generally, and the background. By doing this I can sort of make them stand out. Like here, this really is quite shaded at the back here. I'm just using the side of the brush to sort of rub the paint on. No detail, just blocking in areas of darkness. So this back wall behind the flowers is facing into the room and away from the light above, so the darkest areas are over here, and the highest contrast really, because the roses here are coming forwards into the light. So I've made a lovely brown, really a nice earthy brown, just using these three colours of the yellow I'm using is Winsor yellow, which is a kind of mid-yellow. It's neither orangey like a cadmium yellow, but it's not too cold either. What am I doing picking up this one? It's a nice sort of medium yellow, so pretty versatile for this. I went for the magenta instead of alizarin or cadmium red, because there's a lilac tinge to these flowers, and I thought magenta would just lend itself a little bit more to this subject than those other colours. Alizarin takes a long time to dry as well, so it's not the easiest paint to use, although it's a lovely colour. So just finding these leaf shapes at the bottom, and there's the vase right down there, I think. So this technique is sometimes referred to as a grisaille. You can do a monochrome underpainting, and I think the old masters would work like that when they were doing portraits. Do a grisaille, a tonal painting first, and then put layers and glazes of oil paint on top of the dry grisaille study, so that all the tones were worked out first, and then the colours would be laid on top in thin layers, which is really effective. But I'm hoping, as I've got this so thin, and I'm doing an alla prima study, so in one go, or in the first go, that this tonal study will just become part and parcel of the final painting. I think some of this may still be visible and being used as the painting is developed. So there's shadows down here on the bottom, on the baseboard that I've got this stood on. At this point now, just trying to work out, so I've got that there. At this point, you can start to see the shape of the painting, how it might look as a finished piece. So you can now assess the composition that you've got, and now is the time to change anything if you're not happy with it. You can rub this around with a cloth or kitchen roll to change the drawing. I think I'm liking this though. It already feels like it's got some character to it, so I think I will go with this. It's quite dark in there, which pushes these flowers forwards, and I darken behind them. This colour is quite good for a kind of general dark shaded feel in the background here, because it's quite neutral. So I'm just going round, checking everything, looking again. I'll just stand back and have a look. So that one here needs to be a little bit bigger. So if I get a cloth, I can just wipe that off and kind of work with the pale umber underpainting that I've got here. So there's something amiss here. This isn't quite right. I think that goes there. Just give that a little shuffle around. There's a bud in here, and then there's another flower there. And this is a leaf in shadow, partly there. Okay, I'm going to start putting some colour into this now. because I think this is looking okay. Make sure I've got that ellipse right, so the leaves are partly obscuring the base there, and there is shadow. I'm going to thin that down again and just rub on, almost with almost no paint on the brush, but just enough to show the shadow on the base here. I've got petals in the foreground, but I don't think they're really going to appear. Need to darken that actually, because there's almost no light reaching that glass bowl at the bottom. Okay, I think next I'm going to go in with some dark, rich red colours. There's some of this in the cloth in the background. I'm not going to have it quite so runny. Just touch in some colours where I can see them. That lovely silky fabric has some really nice colours in there that harmonise with the colours in the flowers. The centre of that one is pretty dark. This helps me to see which parts of the painting are flowers and which are leaves. Just touches of colour helps to just partly show the aspect of the flower as well, which direction it's moving in, and that helps to describe its space, its shape I mean. So just using the deeper pinks that I've got mixed here, and you can see how quickly I can work because I've done most of the colour mixing I'm going to need. Okay, get a fresh brush and start on some of the greens. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of Sansodor and my darkest sort of blue-green, and just put in some of these very dark areas. And don't want it too thin either, because I need it to be quite a strong, deep tone for this. These are geranium leaves. Just have this lovely spreading shape to them, and they fill in the gaps. The leaves of the roses weren't particularly healthy looking. They had black spots, so I haven't put many of those in because they just made everything look a bit bedraggled. So these geranium leaves are standing in, but they're nice, they're good shape. I think I need this darker still, so I'm going to put a little bit of alizarin into the green, which will help to, not alizarin, magenta, which will help to deepen it with some blue, I think. Kind of purplish, but that's okay. Seems to work. Put some more of the medium toned green mixed with that dark colour. My dog snoring in the background. Just placing these in, looking how they relate to each other. And that's more of a slightly lighter. I'm going to put a little bit more green, yellow into that green. It's just slightly, I think because it's the underside of a leaf, a little bit more lightness to that. And also down here. You notice I've got the board pinched between these two blocks on the easel. That's because the big block here casts a shadow onto a small board like this. It's great for a canvas, but for a little board, a long shadow cast across here is not helpful at all. And also I'm working under a low ceiling, so I can't raise the whole thing up very well. Can't raise it any higher than this. But this is the block on the rising part of the easel that I can kind of pinch it with to hold it steady, and that works very well because it's not obscuring the board either. You know, there's usually a lip on the bottom shelf of an easel. Again, that would obscure the view of part of this little 8-inch square board. Oops. So I'm just using more of that dark colour that I began with. Some of these deeper areas of tone through here. So that's, mix a bit more. That's magenta with the cobalt blue and a bit of yellow. Just dabbing in areas of dark. And then I'm using, quite chunky brushes here. These are all either Pro Art Sterling or Winsor & Newton bristle brushes I'm using at the moment. I quite like this kind of sketchy feel that these old or slightly more textured brushes can bring to the painting. It keeps it energetic. But I'm going to try now a Rosemary & Co. No. 4 flat. This is from the Ivory range. It's quite a long brush, but I think for this silky fabric in the background, that's going to be really good. And I've got, just thinking where to start. I've got the colour, this kind of gold, show you here, gold colour mixed up. It's really nice for this kind of mid-tone on the silk scarf. We'll try and lay some of that on. There are highlights on this too, but start with this. I'm getting some of that in with the actually we need to just wipe that off. Need this a bit deep and warm over here. I can just hold that up and check it against the subject. So that's the magenta and the Winsor yellow with a touch of cobalt blue in there. Excuse me. And that again around here will throw the rose here forwards in front of the background. So I'm already kind of describing these roses without having painted them much. Use the brush on its end for these strandy bits. And again, this here is this deep gold colour. It's kind of swishing out there. Now I need a sort of neutral background colour here for this shadow. And down here. I've got a mix here for the sort of light areas on this base. May as well dash in, I think, while I'm at it, and keep those edges really soft on the shadows, so the shadows don't jump forwards too much. There's light behind there. Looking for where this needs to go. There's some light here too. I think I want something that's going to place colour on. I've got a filbert here, an ivory long filbert by Rosemary & Co. I'm going to use a little bit of medium so I can kind of slick this green on. My medium is 1 part stand oil with 2 parts Sansodor to it, and it just helps to keep the gloss in the paint. It sort of helps to retain its oiliness, but also helps to make it flow too. So I'm just finding these leaves. There's a very light one there. Need to be lighter actually. If it comes forwards, just slightly more yellow than that. Can't you sort of put that in, because it helps to give shape to the leaves. There's more of it down here too. So I can press the brush head, the bristles, down onto the canvas, onto the board, to give kind of patches like that, little touches of colour in a small area. It's also sticking out here, so just under here there's another leaf catching the light. And here too. So it's helping to bring these leaves out of the background. Bit of yellow in this one. I'm leaving the roses. I'm not doing them straight away because they need a really light touch. To not be laboured at all. So if I put them in towards the end of this process, I can put them there and leave them alone. I won't need to paint around them more fiddle around them, I hope. So I'm just kind of setting the scene for them to be in. I just need to make up more very pale green for the stalk there. And I can rest my little finger on that, almost just resting the nail, just to kind of give my hand some support so it doesn't waver too much. Just looking for little stalks here and there. Bits of light. This has a wavery light edge. Just pausing to have a look. A green edged buds here too. Actually, that's got some nice little spikes coming off it too. I can just, although it's a big brush, I can be quite precise with it. Just trying to make sure I've got, so that goes, that's here. There's a bit of a leaf in there, but just build that up a bit. Actually, with that I can put this rich dark pink in there. It's really big, that leaf. Dark areas in, so we haven't got these gaps. I'll put some more background colour in now between the leaves. Okay, let's I think I'm going to develop down here a bit more. This is a pointed, number 4 pointed ivory brush, and I just want to make sure that vase is substantial enough and that the background is doing what it should really, which is, you know, to work in a helpful way with the subject. I've got a grey mixed up, quite a dark grey, for the shadows. Need more green on that leaf hanging over, it's a dark green. Brush. Right, now the roses. Oh, actually I can see a bit more there to do. Just making up a dark browny grey, mixing the three colours together. Because the edge, the glass at the edge there, is quite a precise edge. That pointed brush is quite good for that. And there's a little gleam of light on there too. Not there. In there. Here too. Okay, now roses. So what I need is, I think, just go in with a, I think it's probably number 6. These are so old, these brushes, I can't read the numbers on them anymore, but it's got a nice rounded end. It's still clean, it's not frizzy at all. It's a good brush. The handles suffered rather over the years, but still a good brush. So this is a kind of mid-tone pink. I need something slightly darker. It's a slightly cooler mix. Which is good for these ones that are facing away from the windows. It's got this lovely plump quality, these roses. They're so round and kind of peachy almost. I suppose the doubles, they've got lots and lots of petals crammed inside. And just see where that goes. Oh, I don't want a great blob. And then it gets kind of pinker over here. This is really delicate, this one. Very, very pale. Make that a little bit more neutral. Just mix some sort of bit of the backcloth fabric colour into it, just to kind of soften that down a bit. And then I've got that very vivid pink. I think more of the magenta. Just comparing it. There's a strong pink here. And there's a bud there with it onto. When I don't know if you can see, I'm mixing this is magenta and yellow, and because the magenta has this kind of purple quality, magenta and white, and if I add a bit of yellow, it just warms it a bit, so it goes slightly softer, not quite so purpley, but small amounts make a big difference. That's pretty good for that. I need, some pure, bright, pinky colours in these buds. There's touches of that in the flowers as well. And then I'm going to use, this is an egbert, a very long filbert shape of the ivory brushes, and I'm just going to put in some of the more delicate shapes with that. Better marks when I hold the brush in this handlebar grip. I can sort of sweep better somehow. This pen grip is quite limited. It gives quite limited movement. But here I can kind of do sweeping dashes of colour. Thin that little bit with some of the medium there, it's just getting a bit claggy. It's really pale here, but not white. There's a whole petals in there I've missed. And I need a sort of deep but neutral version of the petal colour. Just comparing it for these dark spaces down. Slightly greenish actually in the folds of the petals. Kind of warm, tertiary, shadowy colour. made with pink, but kind of tinted with the other, a bit more of the other colours. Just using that for these here, it's quite dark. Make up a little bit more of that very pretty pink. It's this is the magenta, yellow and titanium mix, and I've just put a bit more titanium in there. Just to bring out the shape of this one a bit more. Add more titanium because these ones are whiter. I'm trying to get a subtle kind of touch with the brush. Trying to suggest those layers, but without working too hard. So I don't want them to be stodgy. And there's some of that lightness up here too. Just little touches of light on them. I want to simplify the background a little bit. Quite lively, and I'm not sure that's quite what I'm after. So I've got my flat brush again, and go for the pale colour that I mixed for the background up here. The light's catching it here. Just going to blend it together. Make a bit more of that. It's nice gold colour. Can't make it too bright, it's going to leap out. But so I've started with the WInsor yellow, added a bit of magenta, and then just knock it back a little bit. It's gone green, so we'll put more the magenta in it. Let's try that. Want it a bit warmer. Adding a bit of richness to it. Yes, that's better. Just looking from a distance. I think that needs to be darker really here. Wanting to make a deep dark tone behind this area here. Because that's so important for these flowers here. Need a bit more on that one. Every now and then I check the colours I'm making against the subject to make sure I'm sort of in the right area. $500 different pinks on these flowers. I don't want the paint piled up. Just work on that foreground leaf. Coming forwards there. That's quite important because it's really coming into the foreground. Sort of shaping the curl of the leaf. That's in shadow there, so I need to get that right, because that will make that relationship better between the rose and the, looking at which brush to use, and the leaf in front of it. In fact, there's a kind of a bit of background underneath there. Quite flat on the bottom, the rose. Now I've got this dark purplish colour. More of that down here too. I'm dabbing the brush off on a cloth that I've got hanging from my apron, so I can control how much paint is always on my brush. Quite a lot of light falling on this one. It's quite pink at the moment. Needs to be a bit whiter. And then inside here, the light is catching, and then there's this kind of purplish dark in here. Just checking that over. Put a bit more light on the card that it stood on. I've got a filbert, number 6, long filbert, and I'm just going to add a little bit more white to this pale grey that I made. Quite warm. I'm just going to thin that slightly with the medium, because I don't want it too chunky here. I've got a few petals. I think I will add just around the bottom here. Get this in first. Quite soft shadow. It's very diffused because the light's coming from above and from the side as well. So I'm going to get some of this kind of creamy petal colour. And there's a little bit of dark behind those. Using a bit of imagination here because they're not quite in this position, but just enough to state where the surface is there. Not sure about that there. I think maybe it's a bit of green in that gap. Sort of falling apart rows in there. Some or shadow in there. What I'm going to do is, the rose is a bit pink and I just want to get a slight creamy quality to it that they have. So what I can do is just with some clean kitchen roll, lift off a little bit of the wrong, where the colour's a bit heavy and wrong. And hopefully I can get more of the cream colour on there. I'm going to use one of these Egberts. Well, this is Jackson's Accoyer. It's in the style of the Egberts that Rosemary & Co. make. Just got to thin it a bit. I want it to flow. I don't want this to be a sticky, heavy kind of mark. That's better. Just not quite so pink. And then that one in the background there, I can darken that because it's in the shadow a bit more. So I'm fine tuning really. It's all there, I'm just making sure it all works as it should. The cobalt blue isn't as dark as French ultramarine, so it's not giving me very, very strong darks. The magenta is really the darkest colour I've got on this palette. So I'm using plenty of both really. It's a bit bright, but more yellow just to temper that colour a bit. That's better. And there's an issue here. I can see that foreground, the greys down here, need to sort of go back there, sort of come down a bit too far. Get some of that deep gold colour back here, because this is a bit unresolved here. Again, it looks a bit bright on there, so I'm just adding blue as well just to temper it down a bit. Looking for things that are jumping out awkwardly. I feel that's a bit strident there. That's it. I think I'll stop. So I hope you found that useful, and I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.